Hello, everybody. Bo Billington here with Finding That Next Gear. Got another episode coming at you live, and super excited to have Ethan King on today. Ethan, thanks for joining.
Hey, thanks for being here, Bo. Huge fan of the show and love what you're doing. So happy to be here.
Awesome, man. I appreciate that. I've got two podcasts, and this is the one that I enjoy the most because I get to meet people like yourself, talk about entrepreneurship, which is really kind of like what I always aspired to do since I was 16. So thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. Just to jump into things, let's get a little bit deeper about kind of who you are, what you do, and why you do it. And obviously, you got a lot going on. You're a book author, which is great.
Yeah.
You're a speaker, which is awesome. And then you've got a couple of different brands ranging from, Zeus's Closet to Stuff for Greeks, as well as Six Pack Dads, which I think we need to talk about. I'm kind of on the verge, and I need a little bit of love there. But
Okay.
I'd love to learn a little bit more about kind of you. What you're into currently, and how you got into this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally scatterbrained, right? All over the place.
I think that's good though. That's important.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I believe that life is short, but you can live a lot of different lives in one. And one of my mentors told me, you should reinvent yourself every 10 years or so. And if you think about it, like if reinvention can mean different things, but like even if it's just changing careers or something, or kind of pivoting your business, you get an opportunity to live like five different lives in one if however that math breaks down during your working life, instead of just doing one thing. So while I know that I could probably be a lot more financially successful if I just honed in on one thing.
Sure. Well, what's the
To
fun in
me,
that, right?
yeah, yeah. What's the fun? To me, happiness is the ultimate measure of success. It's not a dollar amount. Of course, we need money to live and to function in life. And don't get me wrong, I like making money and I teach people how to make money, but that's not the end all be all. Happiness. I look for return on happiness more than anything else because you only get this one life.
Let me echo that. That's kind of why I started my business as well. Just 5 years ago, in fact, we hit our 5 year anniversary yesterday.
Oh, congrats.
Thank you. It's just crazy, big milestone. I wish I jumped out earlier, to be honest with you. But when I first started, and I told people, hey, I'm looking back in the first 5 years. For me, the barometer of success is happiness, fulfillment, and am I still married? Right. And so far, I've checked all those boxes, which is great. But I totally agree. I was in a mundane situation that didn't work for me personally, so I sought to break it. But I love the point about every 10 years. I think that's amazing. And I've been trying to incorporate some things, learn some new things here or there, but I can make that maybe a mission. So I just wanted to kind of say kudos to you. I really like the mantra.
Yeah. Well, let me go back and actually answer your question since you asked about my background. That mentor who told me that was actually my high school art teacher. His name is Kevin Cole, and I still talk to him to this day. He's still part of my life. And so that's my background. Growing up, I wanted to be an artist, like a fine artist, like drawing, painting, sculpture. And my parents told me, artists don't really make any money until after they're dead. So, so I was a stubborn kid and I didn't listen to them. I decided that I was going to major in art anyway. And it turns out they were right. It's very hard for artists, in a traditional sense,
Sure.
to make a good living. So there was a conflict there because I wanted a great lifestyle. Like I grew up watching lifestyles of the rich and famous, and I was just unapologetically, I wanted to be rich, but I also wanted to be an artist. So there was kind of a conflict
Wanted
there.
to have your cake and eat it too, and end up with that specific career. I get it totally.
Exactly, exactly. So, long story short, and I talk about it more in my book. I go really, really deep into my backstory, but I made some bad decisions as a teenager and got arrested a couple of times, and actually got suspended from college for a semester for making bad choices. The president of the college actually, now when I'm saying college, I'm talking about a major university, University of Georgia. So this was a big
That's
deal.
that's my alma mater as well.
Oh, go dogs!
Yeah,
Awesome.
finally.
Love it. So yeah, President, I don't know what years you were there, but when I was there, President Michael Adams
Yep.
actually called me to his office and he actually suspended me from school. I was lucky that he didn't expel me. But I fortunately graduated with my art degree and bit of a criminal record, so I was dead broke and ended up taking odd jobs. I went back to art school and learned graphic design, so I could actually make some money with some of my artistic talent. And at night, I was taking out the trash at a strip club in Atlanta, which was like a very grimy, dangerous strip club on the south side of Atlanta. And it was not a favorable time in my life. In fact, one of the most humiliating times in my life.
Sure.
I actually ended up doing graphic design for some of the DJs at the strip club once they learned that I was a graphic design. I was studying graphic design, and of course I couldn't show any of that work in my portfolio to get a real
Right.
job because it was too raunchy. So that was a very dark time in my life, and I felt trapped in a lifestyle that I wasn't happy with. Especially growing up, I grew up. My dad was a preacher and grew up in the church, so there was a lot of guilt there too. And I knew that I needed to make a change, but I didn't know how to make that change, and I was scared to make that change. Well, one day, on my way to the strip club, I was for work. I was carjacked at gunpoint, and
Man, that was definitely a tough tough time in your life.
yeah, so the robber took everything. I thought he was gonna kill me. I took off running, and it was at that moment that I knew I needed to make a change. And I never went back to work in that industry again after that day. And I do not think it is coincidence that my life completely turned around within about 30 days after that carjacking happened. And I ended up finally getting like a full-time real job as a graphic designer at a newspaper. Um, Also, my freelance graphic design career kind of took off. We landed some big name clients like Tyler Perry before he was the Tyler Perry, and I was able to work with him for about 10 years and design all of his the books and graphics and merchandise for his
That's a good
stage plays.
contact to have.
Yeah, yeah, he's a huge inspiration too, and I can tell you some of the learnings that I got from him. And I also had a side business that I had started with my girlfriend as a school project called Stuff for Greeks. And what we did there is we designed custom gear for the fraternities and sororities on campus because I was in a frat, she was in a sorority. So I used my graphic design skills to design stuff for the Greeks. And so we called it Stuff for Greeks. And it was a school project, but about a couple of years later, after that carjacking incident, we started getting real orders like from across the country
So you just like
for,
had a website kind of hung up
yeah,
there that you really didn't do anything with, and then all of a sudden,
exactly.
magically, you start getting emails
Yeah,
for.
well, it was just sitting there, and it was a real website because for the school project we had to. It was a branding exercise, so we had to create a website for a fictitious company, do the business cards, the letterhead, all that kind of thing, the logo, and so it was actually sitting there in real life, and I was doing some projects for my friends anyway, just because it was fun to me and for my own fraternity, but then I think it's a real testament into anyone out there who's starting a business or very new to your business. Is that moment when you get an order from someone who's a complete stranger, it's
That's
not your mom or your best friend, and
yeah.
you're like, whoa, oh, this is actually real. And then you get another order, and it's like, then you start to hone in on what's working. That's when I knew this thing had legs. And what happened is this and I'm telling my age here, but this was when Google was new,
Right.
so early like 2000s, and our SEO, our search engine optimization, was just dialed in to the point where we were at the number one listing in Google
Probably because
organically.
SEO didn't really exist at the time.
It existed, but nobody really knew what it was. It
Right.
was still a new term.
Yeah.
But here we are at the top of Google. This was before Google even offered sponsored ads, if anybody can believe that. But yeah, it was just boom, boom, boom. So when anybody in the Greek world across the U.S. was searching for Greek paraphernalia, fraternity, sorority jackets, we were coming up number one. So that's how we ended up getting the business, and we're still one of the top providers. This is now 20 years later. Stuff
Unbelievable.
for Greeks is still one of the top recognized companies in the world of Greek paraphernalia.
That's insane.
Yeah.
And also too, I read, you started it for $700. I'm guessing that was in the class to kind of maybe pay for the design, unless you did it yourself, and to
Yeah.
host it. And that's a crazy story. You don't really hear about that type of scenario that often, where you just kind of fall backwards into a business that's viable and now it's recognized globally.
Well, here's the thing: you have to lean in, and I actually want to put tie the bow on that story. We so when we first launched stuff for Greeks with that $700, and that was literally so my girlfriend and I. So we actually didn't. Um, we started the business. We actually formed the legal entity after we got the first paid order
Right.
from a stranger.
Got
So
it.
that order happened to be $300. And so that's when we knew it had legs because we had some other orders from friends and stuff. And we said, okay, well, let's actually open a business bank account so that we can grow this thing and get a bank loan and buy some equipment. But we need to have an account. So you put in 350, I'll put in 350. So instead of going Dutch to the movies, we went Dutch on a business together.
Yeah.
So we put in our 700 and the 300 from the first order. Opened our bank account with $1,000,
Nice.
and it grew a lot from there. But the thing is, a pivotal point in the early stages of our business is that we were only doing the design work and then we would send it to you. That was our offer. You pay us, it was a service based business. You pay us for the design work. Let's say we're designing your sorority jacket. We send you the design via email. You go to your local shop and get the jacket made. Well, customers would come back after they got the design and said, I don't have anywhere to get this made. I want you to make it. And I'm like, I don't know how to make a jacket. What do you mean?
Right.
You just go find some old lady with a sewing machine and get
That's
it.
what I do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not what I do. Well, then more and more people asked for that. And we finally one day just said, okay, yes, we'll do it. And this girl paid us a few $100s to make her sorority jacket. And now I knew I had to figure it out
Yeah.
to actually fulfill, because once you pay me money, I'm going to over deliver and figure out how to get it done. Now it's real that you've paid me money.
100%.
And we did that, and that's how we actually ended up pivoting into the apparel space, which is where we are now.
Right.
Then we took Stuff for Greeks kept growing and growing. We were working out of our home basement. We had one machine, two machines, three machines. We ended up having 8 employees coming to our house, and neighbors were complaining. So we had to get out of the house. And this is one thing I learned from Tyler Perry. He always said, own it, own it, own it. So we didn't want to go lease a commercial space. We were fortunate enough to be able to buy a building, an office building in West Midtown Atlanta,
Wow.
which at the time, West Midtown was kind of a desolate industrial area, but
Now it's
now
blown up.
yeah, it's blown up and booming. So we actually bought that office building, moved out of our home basement. We opened a retail store because now we had extra space available. So we tried a retail store concept, and we decided to call it Zeus's Closet because we didn't want to be limited to the Greek market. And Zeus's Closet, now we do things for corporate, like corporate swag, school uniforms. We do wardrobe for the film and TV industry. So about half of our business is still like fraternity and sorority related, and the other half is all of that kind of stuff. And I remember another pivotal moment in my life is Zeus's Closet was growing so rapidly that we got the Bulldog 100 award, which I'm sure you've heard of.
Yeah.
It recognizes the 100 fastest growing companies owned by UGA alumni. Now we've been fortunate to make that list 4 times, but the first time that we received that award, I stepped on stage and guess who handed me the award? President Michael Adams, the same president who had suspended me from college a
Yeah.
decade earlier, was now presenting me with a business award. And
Now, did
that
he remember?
moment,
I gotta ask. Did he remember?
oh, who knows? I have no
Yeah.
idea. We were on stage taking a
That was your
photo.
moment though. That could have been a big moment. Was like, hey man, that was either the best thing you ever did or the worst thing.
Probably at that time, I didn't want to take a chance on messing anything up, or probably had in the back of my mind, well, they might take it away from me. But I remembered him for sure. I don't know if he remembered me. That was 10 years, a 10-year span. But for me, that was a pivotal moment because
That's awesome.
it was like full circle.
Full
It
circle. Yeah.
gave me validation that now my life was on track and I was in alignment with my purpose for the universe, if you will.
Yeah.
And that was just a great moment in my life. I love to share
No,
those
that's
stories.
a great story. It's interesting too how your journey kind of got you to where you are now, and you had to go through the situation in college. You probably had to get, suspended for a semester, go work at the strip club, get carjacked. Those things were part of your journey. And of course, they're all unfortunate. And sounds like it was a really dark time at that moment. But you likely wouldn't be here had you have not gone through those moments and then had that kind of light bulb moment where you're like, this is not who I am, preacher's son. Like I need to kind of change some things. And so quick couple of questions for you. So you started then stuff for Greeks in college and then kind of went through that journey while that website was just kind of hanging out there in the ether,
Right.
right?
Correct.
And then fast forward to today, and are you still business partners with the girlfriend? Is that, a lot of times, business partnerships, and I've been through a couple that haven't gone well, don't always end well, especially over such a long time horizon.
Yeah, I am. We are actually still business partners, and we've been married 19 years now. We have two amazing kids, a boy and a girl,
Nice.
ages 7 and 11, and yeah, and
Your wife's your
we
business partner. I didn't know that because you said my girlfriend, and I was
yeah.
like, how does this story end? Right. So that's
Yeah,
that's so cool. And so you guys work in the business together for both
we do.
Zeus's Closet as well as Stuff for Greeks.
Correct. Yes.
Got it. Okay, that's awesome, man. And so let's talk about that's a great backstory. I appreciate you sharing that. Let's talk a little bit about today. What's your role for the company? You mentioned you've got a lot of irons in the fire, which that interests me. I'm always interested in multiple revenue streams. I think it's important, especially for an entrepreneur. But what's your role now for Zeus's Closet? Is it really kind of getting the name and getting the brand out there? Are you still in the day to day? Are you running operations? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I do a lot of public speaking now. So I'm often traveling, or doing virtual stuff like we're doing now. And I'm a spokesperson for, I'm really an advocate of just improving your life
Yeah.
overall. And I believe entrepreneurship is a great vehicle to help you improve your life if you do it right. It can also lead to a lot of misery, but
Totally agree.
that's what my book, Wealth Beyond Money, is about. Now, that actually does end up boosting our business in Zeus's Closet. That wasn't the intent of what I do. But as far as the day-to-day part of it, we do have an awesome team that runs the company. I do manage the marketing part of it, the sales and marketing side of it more so, and my wife manages the like HR, payroll, insurance, that type of thing, some of the admin and clerical stuff. She was a business major. I was an art major, so we kind of stay in our lane and we complement each other well in that regard. And I do currently see people for sales appointments, for some of the sales appointments that get booked in one of our locations.
Got it. So you're essentially though helping with the brand and the image and stuff like that. Well, I want to go back to comment you made a second ago about entrepreneurship and how that can impact your life and enrich your life, but also too there's an inverse to that where it can go the other way.
Yeah.
And I mentioned to me what was important was that I was married after 5 years when I reflect on kind of my journey, and I have found too personally, and I say I'm pretty self-aware, which I think is an important trait in entrepreneurship. But personally, I feel like this has been a great journey for me as well because it's really helped bubble up my gaps. Like it's really helped me understand like where I'm deficient and areas of which I need to improve. And then of course, you need to go on that journey to improve those areas. But is that kind of what you were talking about? How entrepreneurship can make you into a better person?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing I believe in is personal responsibility.
Mhm.
And when I encounter people who are unhappy with their situation in life, and a lot of the flawed thinking I see is people who have a victim mentality or have a mentality that somebody is supposed to take care of them. Well, nobody's coming to save you in life.
Right.
The government's not going to save you. Your parents can't save you. You have to just grab the reins and take ownership for every area of your life. And in my book, I talk about the 6 dimensions of success. And it's an acronym called, and it spells the word simple.
Mhm.
And it's spirituality, your intellect, your money mastery, your physical presence, your love, which is your relationships,
Right.
and your entertaining experiences. And in each of those 6 buckets of life, if you think about them in terms of not life balance, but contextual constant like calibration of those 6 areas from day to day based on what's going on in your life, I believe that you truly can have it all, but you have to be aware of which buckets need to be filled and which are already at a good level so that you can adjust accordingly. But it's up to you to do that, because if you wait on someone else to do it, that time may never come, and then you're just going to be irritated and disgruntled with life overall.
Miserable 24/7. I totally agree. You need to take accountability. And I kind of went through that journey as well, where I was in corporate America. It was like 16, 17 years. And it was like Office Space. Every day of my life was the worst day. And like, outside of work, I was fulfilled. Life was great. But during the workday, 9 to 5, where I'm spending the majority of my time, I was unhappy. Mm-hmm. And I came to that realization as well. It's like, well, I can do this for the next 40 years and just be a miserable person. Mm-hmm. Or I can take charge and make a change. And for me, entrepreneurship was a change that made sense. Obviously, for other people, that doesn't make sense. But I completely agree that, at some point, if something's not working, well, it's time to look at other options and change it up. Otherwise, you're destined for a very lonely and disappointing world.
Yeah. And I want to be clear here. I'm not telling everybody to just go out, quit your job and start a business.
That's not what I heard.
Yeah. But I do believe that living in America, we have a great opportunity to have like a side hustle, and you get those tax benefits. So you can have your full-time corporate job, which can afford you a nice lifestyle, a nice income. Because the great thing about having a job is you can shut it off at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. Right. Being an entrepreneur, you really can't shut it off when you own it. It's hard to be able to shut it off.
Yeah, comes quick, and brain starts working.
Yeah. But if you can have the best of both worlds, because for a time, we had that where I had my full-time job at the newspaper, but in the evenings, I was moonlighting, growing my business. Yeah. So a lot of times the story gets sensationalized with entrepreneurs, or it gets edited, and you think, oh, this person just jumped and took this leap of faith and it all worked out. No, I was very careful. Like I had my job doing the business on the side. My wife had her job working as an insurance broker in corporate America. She was helping grow the business on the side. I left once the business grew to a certain point. Then I resigned from my full-time job and worked in the business full-time. We were still living off of my wife's income, and she had great benefits because she worked in employee benefits. And then a year later, we grew the business to a point where she could leave her job. So it was a gradual thing. And I want to be sure that I talk about this on this podcast, because I don't want to give people the illusion that you just throw caution to the wind and jump in and it all works out. Because
that's the essence of this podcast, though. And I totally agree, because all you see in the paper is sensationalized. Somebody created $100 million business in 2 months, which is all a bunch of BS. I mean, literally, to get to the 5-year point has been the most exciting and exhausting experience of my entire life. It's not easy. And I did the same. I started the company 2 years prior to jumping out, got it to 80% of the way, had enough savings, had a game plan, jumped out, was cautious, was strategic, was watching my cash flow just to make sure that I didn't run out of cash while forecasting. So I totally agree. And I don't think anybody who's listening is under the assumption that it's, just quit your job, don't even have a concept and get out there. Yeah, it's not that easy. And this is real life. I mean, you were married, or I don't know when you guys got married, but you've got kids. I mean, there's a lot more at stake here than living with mom and thinking, hey, I'm just gonna create some software in the background.
But that's the great time. That's the best time to start it, while you're living with mom, while you
100%. I wish I did.
Yeah, because as you get older and you accumulate more and more responsibilities, then it gets mentally harder to risk more, because it's like, oh, well, now I have children and I have a mortgage. And so I encourage people, while the younger you are, man, go out there and try as much as you can, because you really don't have as much to lose.
Totally agreed. Yeah. I mean, we were in the money trap, reel. Again, 2 kids in private school, just built a house. And then I come and tell my wife that I'm gonna jump out of corporate America. I mean, her head about exploded. She's an attorney, so she didn't understand it, very risk averse. But that's a topic for another day. This is about you. A couple more questions and we'll get you out of here. And I appreciate the story and, sincerely you spending the time here. So has there been a time within the last 20 years where you thought about hanging it up, like sincerely thought about hanging it up because it was too difficult, sales were down, or maybe you just got burned out? Because that's a real thing.
Man, you know what, Bo? We went through this a very dark time in our business where we ended up in a business dispute with a brand that we were partnered with for years, and all of a sudden they got new leadership and decided that they were going to expose this loophole in a contract that we had signed with them. And they didn't just do this to us, but to several other companies. And they took us to court. We went through a nasty lawsuit, and it was scary. It was at a time when our business was had very, very thin margins. We had actually
Fragile all the way around, you know?
fragile, yeah. And ironically, we had just joined EO. We had just graduated to that $1 million mark in revenue, but our margins were razor thin. In fact, we might have even lost money that year. And then fighting that lawsuit, which was unfair and abusive from our point of view, cost us about $300,000 that we didn't have. So we had to take on very dangerous debt to fight that, to survive.
Otherwise, you go out of
And
business.
yeah.
It's a shame when these big companies, literally just kind of use the small organizations. But that's a topic for another day. Sorry, keep going.
No, it was definitely a David and Goliath moment. And
Yep.
we were David up against Goliath. And you asked about, thinking about hanging it up. When you're going through that, there's always, it's like a game of chess. You have to figure out what's your best next move, and thinking 10 steps ahead. And there's always that possibility of maybe we just filed bankruptcy. And that was really scary to me. I didn't want to go bankrupt, didn't want to give up. I didn't want to lose like that. So we actually
There's
ended
also an
up,
ego hit too, right? I
yeah,
mean, it's like it's one thing to kind of lose a business, and the other is like I failed, you know.
yeah, yeah.
So
I failed, and,
yeah,
and I didn't want to go out that way either over a bully move. I'm
yeah,
not going to get beat up by the bully and get killed by the bully and go away. So we decided to fight back. We actually ended up firing our lawyer. And the funny story with this, I was sharing this with my EO forum, which is kind of like for your listeners, it's kind of like a mastermind group of
Mhm.
6 to 9 entrepreneurs, and we share everything confidentially once per month and help each other out. It's like a peer support group, and they knew what I was going through, and it got to a point where I felt like I didn't have any more control over the situation, because all I could do is make my move, send our offer to the other side, or send our demands, and they send moves back, and it got to a point where I felt helpless. I'm like, there's nothing else I can do about this situation. We're losing money, but I'm just kind of trapped right here.
yeah.
And what I did was I decided to train for my first marathon, right in the middle of all this. And
Okay.
people were like, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
So for your listeners who don't know, a marathon is 26.2 miles. Most people can't just get up and run that in one day. You have to train for it, which requires hours and hours of training, like 3 hours of running every day, every other day. So it's a big time commitment. So I had to take time away, but I knew that I needed to do that.
Break.
I needed a win. I needed a win, and I knew if I could challenge myself to finish that marathon, then that gives me the mental win in the area. Remember, I talked about those 6 dimensions.
Yeah.
Well, if my money was down, I couldn't do anything about that. And I wasn't gonna let it was impacting everything else. It was impacting my relationship with my family when I'm stressed out, I'm irritated because of this one matter, and now I'm taking it out on my kids or something. It impacted my spirituality. So I was like, I'm not going to let this pull me all the way down. I'm going to control what I can and take control of my fitness and win there. And I think it's no coincidence that I made a better decision, and I ended up firing my attorney, getting a new attorney that had much bigger letterhead, bigger guns, and we ended up countersuing that party. And we actually, in the end, prevailed for a fraction of the amount that they were asking for. And not only that, but we made changes to our business because of that actually boosted our business, and we're much better for it now.
That's awesome. No, I like the balance you've mentioned, and you were out of balance, and adding that kind of that marathon, that training into it kind of brought you back.
Hmm.
level, which is important. And I find myself kind of doing that as well. If something's going on in business and I'm going out for runs,
Yeah.
making sure my fitness is high, which is very important, I think, from an entrepreneurship perspective. It
Yes.
brings me clarity. I mean, if I didn't work out, I'd be on all kinds of like beta blockers
Oh
and
yeah.
medicine, trying to keep me be still. But that's a great story. I'm glad you guys prevailed in some form or fashion. Just a couple more questions. So, what do you find is that number one trait of entrepreneurs that actually find success versus those that don't?
Um, the seeking out of a tribe of mentors, of knowledge, of people who have been there, done that, so you don't have to make those mistakes. Just like with me sharing you about the mistakes that I've made in my journey. Well,
Yeah,
hopefully you or anyone else who is listening to this can not have to make can use that as a shortcut. That's the fastest thing you can have to a shortcut in life.
I
Like
agree.
they say there are no shortcuts. That's the next best thing is having mentors, having people pour into you. I believe it was Jim Rohn who said that you are the sum or the average of the five people you talk to the most.
Mhm.
And by talk to, it doesn't necessarily have to be a two-way conversation. Talking to someone can be listening to their audiobooks or their interviews or their podcast interviews or their YouTube channel. But think about the five people who you want to be like, whether it's business leaders or people in your industry or even just people who are crushing it in life that you're like, I admire this person. I want to be like this person. They probably have a lot of content out there, and maybe pour that into your brain instead of binging the other show on Netflix or talking to your neighbor who just wants to gossip all the time or whatever. Be pouring stuff into your brain constantly. Because when I'm out there running, I most of the time don't listen to music anymore. I'm listening to business books, audiobooks,
Yeah.
podcasts. I'm constantly feeding my brain so that I am improving my body and I'm sharpening my mind at the same time every single day. And I see that trait in the most successful people.
That's a phenomenal point. So I personally do have a tribe and mentors, and the great part about it is you can get information from them, but you don't always have to listen to it. You can make your own decision at the end of the day.
Hmm.
But I hadn't really thought about it from the perspective of podcasts and audiobooks, where you literally may not have a personal connection with somebody, yet you still have access to their brain
Right.
through podcasts. And that's a shift I literally am trying to make at this point when I go to the gym. Instead of listening to the same songs over and over, the same playlist, incorporating, some sort of audiobook just so I can do more with the time that I'm taking out to take care of my health. So I think that's some really sage advice there. What's one piece of advice you would give yourself if you could go back 20 years ago, with your entrepreneur journey? What's one piece of advice you'd give yourself on maybe how you could have done things different, maybe grown faster, et cetera?
One piece of advice I would give myself is to know my worth. I would tell young Ethan, know your worth. I wasn't charging enough for what I was delivering.
Yeah.
And I see this happen a lot with creative people more so than anyone else, but artists. The problem, we love what we do so much that we feel guilty about charging for it sometimes. And I had that problem for a long time. In fact, I remember one moment where my wife walked in the door and I had been sitting at the computer for hours working on this digitizing project for a client. And it was part of like a jacket order. And she was like, she wanted me to spend time with her just before we had kids. And she was like, yeah, what are you doing? And I was like, I'm working on this thing. She was like, well, how much are you charging for that? I'm like, well, I'm not charging anything. I just threw it in as part of this. She was like, are you serious? Why are you need to be charging money for that? So I did not understand my worth. And we have raised prices so many times throughout the years. And every time we raise prices, I'm nervous about it.
Right.
But after I do it, I'm so glad I did it. We've never raised prices and then lost money. We always just get more sales, actually get more money. It's because I should have done that a long time ago. I wasn't charging enough for the value that I deliver.
That's a hard dynamic, especially when you start in a company, is the pricing component. And I found myself doing the same where I've raised prices, I think just last year and a year before that I did, because I finally realized I wasn't charging enough. And it also helps to kind of weed out maybe clients that are not optimal,
Hmm.
right? So
Oh
there's
yeah.
benefits to that, but I totally agree with the point you made there, and can appreciate it. And I feel like, especially when people start their business, they just want, just getting a paycheck's great, even if even if it's small and not worth your, worth your time. All right, lightning round here. This is the last session here. Appreciate you humoring us and joining again. So, what's your favorite aspect about being your own boss?
Freedom. I love travel. Super passionate about travel. I've had the freedom to travel to every continent. I've lost count of the number of countries. I have friends all over the world, but the ability to be able to do that is something that I do not take for granted, and I wish that for everyone. And it's something I talk a lot about in my book, Wealth Beyond Money, about living a life by design, living life on your own terms, and being able to be the boss of your own life. Even if you don't go the road of entrepreneurship, like I said, I think everybody should at least explore having a side hustle, but that empowers you to have that freedom. And to me, the ultimate freedom is freedom, financial freedom, the ability to do whatever you want, whenever you want, with whoever you want. That is the ultimate freedom, and I enjoy that aspect of being my own boss.
No, I agree. That's great. Least favorite part of being your own boss?
Oh man,
Exact
it,
opposite.
yeah, it is. You have to have a great team. You have to have great. No great business exists without great people behind it. The challenge with that is that people have their own problems, their own personal issues. And when you're the boss, their problems become your problem. If somebody's kid is out sick and you're depending on them to show up to work and now they can't show up at work, well, you're the boss. Now that's your problem, especially when you're small, because now you have to fill in and do their thing, or somebody has to fill in and do their thing. Or maybe stuff comes up in life, or somebody decides to quit, or somebody gets sick, or gets hit by the proverbial bus. Well, now that's your problem. So all of these problems become yours, and that's the suckiest part of it to me.
Yeah, no, that can absolutely be a challenge. So two-part question: biggest success, biggest failure.
Biggest success, biggest failure. Um, yeah, my biggest success comes from helping people, and it's been a journey with speaking and becoming president of EO Atlanta. That really opened my eyes to what it really means to be a leader, because EO Entrepreneurs Organization is a nonprofit. It's everyone on the board of the chapter board is a volunteer. So being president of a chapter, I can't dangle a paycheck over your head and say, I'm going to fire you if you don't do this thing. These are all bosses of multi-million dollar companies. They don't have to do this. So how do you convince them to do things? You inspire them to lead. You can't lead by command. You have to lead by inspiration. So doing that, one thing led to another. I had a very successful year as president of EO that led to another event called Global Leadership Academy, where I got to meet with other EO past presidents from around the world. And I met the dean of EO Learning, whose name is Warren Rustin. He's a super accomplished entrepreneur. He actually used to be an advisor to the president of the United States, Gerald Ford. He's become a mentor of mine. And when I published my book, he actually wrote the foreword to my book, Wealth Beyond Money. And my book was just launched last month on March, became a number one international bestseller. And that is definitely my biggest accomplishment to this date. Not because of the money, because in all transparency, I donated the launch proceeds to St. Jude's, which is my favorite charity, because I have a sore spot for kids and the stuff that they're dealing with the cancer and things like that. It's a whole another topic, but I donated all of the launch proceeds to charity, and the book was very successful, and it gave me a platform to help more people, to spread the impact. So that is why it is my greatest success to date.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, congratulations.
Thank
That's
you.
fantastic.
Yeah.
The inverse of that. What about your biggest failure?
My biggest failure. So many of them. It's hard to. I know I've talked about a couple of them on here. Um, You know, I, I there was a time when if I go back before I became EO president and did leadership and learned and became a different person. In hindsight, I was actually a terrible manager. And my biggest failure is that I ran my company. My company culture was terrible. I would say it was non-existent, but every company has a culture, whether
Right.
you know it or not. And it was a very poisonous culture. And I remember when my wife was pregnant with our first child, with our daughter, we had I think at the time we had about 6 employees plus the two of us, and during like a 1 month period while she was pregnant, 3 of our employees quit. So we lost half of our workforce. And we were like, what's going on here? Like, what is it? Like, what? And I was always pointing the finger at them, like they're vindictive, they're bad. But then I had to realize, you know what? Maybe it's something with me, and I need to change what I'm doing. And that led me to do a lot of inner soul searching. And I read this book called "What Got You Here Won't Get You There," and it really helped me change my leadership style, and that kind of started me on that journey. But that was probably my biggest failure, is not managing my people well and losing half of my workforce in a period of 1 month.
Sure. No, I can totally appreciate that. Man, I really appreciate you coming on. Where can people find you? Where can they find your book? Where can they find Zeus's Closet? Where can they learn more about you, Ethan?
Yeah, sure. The best place where it's kind of the hub of all things that I'm doing is my personal website, ethanking.com. It's just my name, ethanking.com. You can definitely find a link to the book there. The book is called Wealth Beyond Money: Unlocking the Six Dimensions of Success for Richness in Every Area of Your Life. You can find that on Amazon. And Zeus's Closet, Stuffer Greeks, it's just the domain, zeus'scloset.com, stuffergreeks.com. We're on every social media platform. But yeah, just go to my website and that'll be the road to all things.
Awesome. And I'll be sure to add them to the podcast as well. And man, sincerely, really appreciate you coming on. This has been really fascinating. I love the personal story and the journey. Congratulations on all the success. I mean, did you ever think 20 years ago you'd go from, essentially missing a semester of college to now being an international best? I mean,
I
seriously,
had,
right? That's a pretty cool journey.
I had no idea. And to be honest, I didn't even realize it 1 year ago. But I just follow the path that life leads. I believe life leaves clues, and I believe that the universe is always conspiring for you. You just have to look for it, and you'll see where the path is. Even when things are going bad, there's something good happening for you, if you just look for it and lean into it. But no, I didn't see it back then, and I'm extremely fortunate for everything I'm able to do now and the people I'm able to help.
Seems like you found the breadcrumbs and figured it out, man. Congratulations again. Thanks again for joining. Really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Bo. It's been great.
Here.